Yeah. You familiar with Jerry Maguire, the movie?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
One of the quotes is "Your net worth is your network,"
Yes. Yeah.
and it's so
Yeah.
true. I mean, I
It is.
feel rich because of the
Mm-hmm.
relationships. One of the
Yeah.
things that those relationships really came to bear was forming Allen, American
Mm-hmm.
Logistics Aid Network.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Blueprint. I'm Courtney Cook, founder of Monarch COO, where I help mission-driven entrepreneurs grow their businesses. Each week, I sit down with inspiring entrepreneurs to explore the stories behind their successes and challenges. Whether you're just dreaming of starting a business or already building one, this podcast is here to show you that entrepreneurship is more attainable than it might seem, with insights for every stage of the journey. Mark Richards is a seasoned leader in the logistics and supply chain industry with over 46 years of experience. He's worked with Fortune 500 companies like Nabisco and Gillette, held leadership roles at industry organizations like CSCMP and WERC, and co-founded the American Logistics Aid Network, which connects supply chain professionals with disaster relief efforts. For the last 30 years, he's been the president of Associated Warehouses, a consortium of 50 plus third-party logistics providers operating over 110 million square feet of space across North America and Europe. Mark joins us today to share his journey, industry insights, and the leadership principles that have guided his career. Let's dive into today's conversation and see what it takes to build a business. Mark, I'm thrilled to have you on the podcast today. You are the president and founder of Associated Warehouses, and you've been in business for 37 years. So I feel like we could probably talk for 3 hours on this podcast, but I'll do my best to keep it at an hour.
Let me first say thank you for having me, Courtney. I
Oh,
really appreciate it. It's always
absolutely.
fun. Always fun to
It's
talk with you.
it's a pleasure to have you. So will you share with us what Associated Warehouses does and what businesses you serve?
Sure, sure. Well, let me start with what businesses we serve. We actually have two populations. One is the manufacturers, people that are shipping things, building things, needing to get things to market. And then our other population would be the 3PLs themselves. Starting with the first, one of the things that we found early on was that unless you're engaged in this business on a daily basis, when I say this business, particularly outsourcing, it can be a real challenge to find a provider that's a good fit for your unique needs. So that's what we do. We'll work with manufacturers, and it can be anything from the journey usually starts with where should I have my location? So we have some tools that help us to do network optimization and help people identify how many locations where they should be. And that transitions to great. Now that you've told me I need to be in New Jersey and Memphis or California, who do I use?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where our network of providers would come in, and we connect them with the right provider for again, their unique needs. And that's easier said than done. So we
Mm-hmm.
have a process that we go through. And then once we connect them with that provider, it's not uncommon for them to say, now help me implement. So, as you can see, we go through a journey. Where should I be? Who should I use? How do I implement and maximize the benefit of that third party? So that's the manufacturer shipper population. The third party population I talked about, and this is really where it started, was where we have a network of 60 regional third party providers that are part of AWI. And our mission with that is simply to help them grow their business. Part of that's bringing opportunities, but there's many, many other things that we do in order to make that happen.
Amazing. So what led you to start AWI?
Good question. There's a long story to that. I'll keep it brief.
You can
It was
you can keep it
actually,
long too, because
okay,
it's a
okay.
fascinating one. I love it.
Well, you may not know all the details.
Maybe not.
I know we've chatted many times, but it was really a situation where the business came to us. And
Okay.
let me explain that. My father had been director of distribution at Nabisco, so he'd been in supply chain all his career, 41 years before he retired from Nabisco, and he had had enough of the corporate world and the politics, and that my dad was a real humble guy and just not a political guy. So things were getting dicey, and he had an idea back in 1980. They actually wrote a white paper about, and I didn't know this until after we got started, but he wrote a white paper that was putting out the concept of if 3PLs could collaborate with one another, that could be a great thing for them
Mm-hmm.
as well as for shippers or manufacturers. So he had this idea, and this is at a time where the corporate world was very, very different from today. He actually went to someone and said, I need out. I want a package. And they put him up with an office for a couple of years, paid him for a couple of years, and gave him an assistant for a couple of years. So he had a sweet deal, as I would say.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what he was able to do was go out to the people that he was using at the time, his third party partners, and say, what do you think of this idea? And there were about 12 of them that said, sounds like a good idea. So he formed what at the time was called Grocery Products Distribution Services. So he had 12 people that he was working with, and it was all focused on food and consumer goods. Then about, I guess it was 5 years later, there was another organization called AWI, Associated Warehouses, actually had been around since 1935,
Oh,
and it
wow.
was yeah, and it was being run by one of the members, is what they called themselves at the time. So it would be a third party provider. This year it might be Joe in New Jersey that's president, and next year it's Sam in Minneapolis, and third year it's someone else.
Hmm.
That model wasn't working. So they approached my father, and this is where I say the idea came to us, or the business came to us. They approached my father and said, would you be willing to take on this group? And at the time, it had about 30 companies. And he said, sure, can't do it myself. What about Mark? And at the time, I was handling the supply chain for Oral-B. So I was either a customer of some of them or they knew me because they
Mm.
wanted me to be a customer of theirs.
Yeah.
And took about a month because I loved what I was doing at Oral-B. And it's a great position, especially for somebody my age at the time. But I said, if I don't do this, I'll always say, what if?
Mm-hmm.
A chance to work with my dad, a chance to do my own thing, so to speak, and grow something. So took the leap. We did have some people that left AWI because we came with a little bit different vision than what they had
Mm-hmm.
had in the past. But now, as you know, we have 60 companies that are part of the network, and all people that we vetted. We have never marketed AWI. It's always been people coming to us saying, I want to be part of this. And then typically we know who they are. We know their reputation and their services and capabilities. But if not, we can quickly vet that. So these are all
Yeah.
handpicked.
That is amazing. So, was there a certain point when you came on board and you guys were shifting things around? I'm sure culturally that was hard. Um, but was there a moment when you're like, all right, we're doing the right thing here, and this is a good change, and this is going to work?
Yeah, you're right. It was a bit of a shock. I started with a card table and a phone, and, and
Card
that was
table.
it. And
Nice.
at the time, a desktop PC,
Mm-hmm.
and started doing our thing. And part of what was a big shift for the people that had been part of AWI in the past was they called themselves a sales group. And what they
Mm.
expected of me at the time was, Mark, just hit the phones, just dial for dollars. And you know me, that's not my style.
Yeah.
I'm more of a, how can I help you? Tell me what your challenges are and how can I help you?
Mm-hmm.
And we really emphasize the idea of collaboration, which was part of what my dad had in his white paper, and that's part of who I am as well. And the thought that if we could all work together, this could be good for everybody. Mark's not going to hit the phones. Mark's not going to hard sell. That's not who he is.
Yeah.
Mark's going to listen and try to solve problems. So initially, what what I was hearing was, why are you doing that? Or you want us to give you $100 each so that you can get a trade show booth? So there's a lot of pushback with the ideas.
Yeah.
And the point where I realized, okay, I think something's happening here and this is all good was when people stopped saying those things and started saying, hey, have you ever thought about this? What do you think about that? And coming to us with ideas to stay relevant. You and I
Hmm.
have talked about an organization that didn't do that, and their troubles. I was just looking at an article this morning that was reminding me of the Blockbuster story in
Yeah.
Netflix.
Yep.
Blockbuster had the opportunity to buy Netflix, passed on that, and look at where we're at. So, our from the beginning, brother culture. Let's do the right thing for the client. Let's listen. Let's not push, and let's stay relevant. Right. So, the changes when people started coming to us with ideas instead of pushing back on the ideas that we tried to deliver to them.
Yeah. So in the spirit of staying relevant, what has your business model looked like over the years? Like, have you changed certain aspects of it to stay relevant? What have those changes looked like, and how did you make some of those decisions?
Sure. Well, it's always been about listening, right? And listening to the client, listening to needs, and some of the things that we did, as I mentioned, initially considered a sales group.
Hmm.
And people would talk about members. We don't call the people that are part of our network members. We either call them an AWI location or an AWI partner, but not members. And we also talk about, and this actually came from one of the AWI locations, this label, the AWI family. And it
Mm.
really is where people have gotten so close to one another and so willing to help one another that we're in a van after one of our annual meetings, 4 o'clock in the morning, going to the airport. And one of the
Amazing.
folks that was at the meeting was in the van with me. And he turns around and said, you've created a family here. I said, well,
Mm.
light went off and here we are.
Mm. That's
Um,
awesome.
so part of the ways that it's evolved, again, just always listening. And then initially it was, do you need a warehouse in Chicago? And it evolved to, how can I help you? Um, we're not quite sure where we should be. So that's when we started looking at the network analysis and offering that.
Mm.
We've also partnered with people that do things like freight audit and payment and freight claims so that we can provide those services to people as they need it. And then the whole notion of managing or administering RFPs on behalf of a shipper or manufacturer. Then again, the implementation I talked about earlier. And we actually have some emerging brands that we do much more for them. We get inserted in their business and we become their logistics team and handle
Nice.
everything from the time they get the PO until it's delivered.
That's awesome. What a huge help, because for a lot of those visionaries and founders, they're like, I want out of that. Don't bog me down with things like that. I'm sure that's a huge relief.
Yeah, yeah, I know it's a relief, and some of the things that we see, even as recent as this week, we just think, oh my goodness. For us that have been in the business for years, it seems simple, but unless you've
Hmm.
done this, again, how do I get a truck? How do I move it from here to there? How do I deal with my 3PL?
Yeah.
Those are all things that people don't know how to do. They don't know the right questions to ask. No fault
Yep.
of their own. It's not their thing. And it distracts them from their primary focus, which is growing their own business.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So have you had any challenges along the way where it's just kind of thrown a monkey wrench in things, or something that you kind of had to climb back out of?
Um, well, I think the first few years, as people were pushing back on the cultural changes that we're trying to make, I came from an operations background, and I was used to you make your plan, you set your goals, you execute, and boom, you're there.
Hmm.
And the whole notion of me talking to someone and them saying, you know what, I don't need that. What? I'm here to
Yeah.
help you. How could you say no? So that was for me mentally was something that I had to overcome. Just wasn't used to people saying no.
Yeah.
And you think when you are a shipper, you're the customer. So again, people weren't saying no. They're saying, of course, we'll do that. But
Hmm.
that's not the way it is when you transition into more of a marketing sales. I hate to use the word sales, but advisory is probably a better way to put
Hmm.
it. Role. People don't always say yes.
Yeah. Yep. Even if I think it can be really frustrating when you're like, but you need the help too in some avenues. It can be painful to watch from the sidelines a little bit of like, oh, but we could make this better.
Yeah. And I have to be careful of that because as you know, I grew up in New York, and the New Yorker comes out every now and then. It's kind of like, hey, come on, trying to help you, dude. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Don't be so stubborn.
right, right.
That's hilarious. So, what was your childhood like? Like, did you know you were going to be an entrepreneur? Did you feel like this was in your blood or what? Like when you look back to that to today, how has your childhood shaped you?
As I look back at it, yeah, it shaped me for this. When I was growing up, last thing I wanted to do, I grew up in the late '60s, early '70s. Um, we were against the man. So,
Mhm.
getting into business was the last thing that I was thinking of. I actually wanted to coach swimming and water polo. It's what I did in high school and college. So,
Oh, crazy.
yeah, yeah. So I started out as a phys ed major and did that for a couple of years, and then recognized that if I wanted to eat, maybe I should consider something else. So, got into business. But growing up, I had an amazing family, great mom and dad. My dad was a hard worker. Everybody loved him. I can't think, not only from growing up, but throughout his life, anybody ever saying anything bad about him. I mean, it
Mm.
just quite a person. My mom was very spunky. She was about 4 foot whatever, and she grew up in your neck of the woods in Kansas City area. But when I was 3 months old was when we moved to Long Island, New York, and my dad, was his Nabisco alignment, and so you have this little Midwestern lady in a pretty tough place, and she was spunky, and you wouldn't mess with my mom. But one of the things, my dad, service and be nice to people and don't burn any bridges, etc. He's almost too nice in
Yeah.
some cases. My mom, don't give up, fight, etc. There's a book that I read. It was right before my mom passed away, and it's called Grit, and an author, Duckworth. I can't recall her first name, but Duckworth is her last name. Great book. And one of the things they talked about in that book was it's a Finnish concept. It's called sisu, and it's about grit. It's
Mhm.
about overcoming challenges and things that you might consider insurmountable by just being persistent, working hard. Um, and she gave me that. I When I talk about swimming again, I had a fear of swimming, of the
Oh,
water. My mom
really?
and I got knocked down by a wave back in Long Island when I was just a little guy, and I didn't get in the water until I was probably 10 years old.
Wow.
And yeah, and we were at a Nabisco plant in Chicago, and my mom and I were staying at the hotel, and my dad was working, and she got me a little alligator thing, and
Yeah,
I
floaty.
just started going back and forth in the pool, and that was kind of the beginning. And when I first tried out for the swim team, the coach had me, and this was a co-ed team, summer team. Coach had me swim against his daughter, who was like 8,
Coach's daughter.
and yeah, and she smoked me, and I could barely get 2 lengths of the pool. Um, but that was part of what got me into the okay, work hard and so on, and
Mhm.
ended up doing okay. didn't make it to the Olympics. That was my goal back then, but
Hmm.
did fine in high school and college, and ended up being the captain of virtually every team that I was on. And, yeah, so that's my childhood. That's what.
Yeah.
So I look at all that and talk about being an entrepreneur. One of the things I've always loved is building teams
Yeah.
and helping people be better than they ever thought they could be. And I think that's part of being an entrepreneur, especially with what we do. I love when people of my age say, "So when are you going to retire?" And they'll talk about how miserable they were at their job. And I say, "I love this. I get to help people every day and I get paid
Hmm.
for it." So
Yeah. So you would do it forever.
I would do it forever.
I
Yeah.
love it. So how many people do you have at AWI working
Well,
with you?
it's really the core team is two of my sons now and myself, and then as I mentioned, we have the 60 companies that we work with. We do have some other people that help in supporting those emerging brands. That's something that they're really focusing on more than I am. My focus continues to be on AWI and how
Hmm.
we can grow the business as well as theirs. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fun to watch them get more plugged in and start developing those same relationships. It's just not Mark's guys anymore; it's
Yeah.
Tim's guys. Or
Oh,
yeah,
that's awesome. So third generation, what's it like working with your sons and like teaching them about leadership, and have they worked for other people and have seen, what the corporate world is like or have they just always been heads down in the family business?
yeah. No, they have not. Like myself, they had their own career before they got involved with the business. They
Nice.
both worked for a third party, States
Okay.
Logistics, amazing company, amazing culture. And with Tim, his focus was more on operations. He was out in Arizona and ran that region from an operations standpoint. And Aaron, our youngest, was at corporate. And
Mm.
to tell you the kind of culture they have, they went to him and said, "We've always wanted to get into lean. We don't have anyone on board that does that. We want you to go out and learn that and then create a group that would implement lean throughout the corporation." So that's what he did.
Nice.
Yeah, again, great. And when we first got to the point where Tim joined, I had to call my friends at States and say, "Guys, I'm sorry.
I'm taking
Thank you
him.
so much for everything that you've done, but we need him." And then the plan was to have Aaron come on later, but it was 6 months later when I
Oh
had
my
to make that
gosh.
second call. Yeah, and um, those are tough
Crazy.
calls because they're still great friends
Yeah.
and they were just so understanding. I just have a lot of gratitude for them and what they did for our sons
Yeah.
and for our family. So they
Hmm.
they had that background. They know the businesses. They know it better than I do, really, because
Nice.
they were more
In it.
immersed, yeah, than I
Yeah.
was. So
Were you getting to a point where you're like, I'm growing, like, I need these bodies here to help me? Is that kind of what the um, reason was for reaching out to say, I need to pull them over?
yeah, yeah,
Got
that's
it.
exactly what it was. Plus, just from a succession standpoint.
100%.
Um, my father worked until he was about 90.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
crazy.
And my wife says I'm going to be the same. I don't know that I'll go
She
to
knows.
90, but yeah, but I again love it. But still, stay relevant, right?
Hmm.
Part of that is facing the facts that things change and that we need to change with that. We need to bring the next generation on before you start saying, "Well, I should have done that 5 years ago."
Yeah. Yeah. I'm already trying to plant seeds to our 6-year-old that you're going to
There
come
you
work with
go.
mommy, right?
There
She's
you
like,
go.
yes. That is really cool. Do each of them kind of cover a certain aspect of the business then?
Yeah, they do. Both of them are always out and connecting with manufacturers, shippers,
Nice.
as well as with AWI locations. But I would say that Tim is more involved with the financial end of it.
Hmm.
He's a real detailed guy. I am not.
Yeah,
So great to have him doing that. And
absolutely.
then Aaron, in addition to looking for opportunities for the AWI locations, he's also used his background with lean and compliance, where he will consult AWI locations that are wanting to get certain certifications or wanting to implement
Awesome.
lean themselves, and kind of a train the trainer
Yeah,
approach. Um,
that
so
is
those are
awesome.
some of the ways we've been able to grow again and be relevant.
Yeah. Oh, that's really, really cool. They each got their own bit of experience prior to coming in, and how it just fits so perfectly into exactly what you need and what that'll look like for the future of AWI and likely continue as a family business. It's really, really neat. So, what are some of your goals for this year in 2025?
Well, and part of our culture is doing the right thing and helping others grow their business. So, if I were to say that there was a goal, it's to continue to be the best that we can be and provide the best support we can.
Yeah.
Some recognition we got last year for the first time. Inc. magazine
Hmm.
has a recognition that they call Power Partners, and the
Oh,
way that
cool.
you get that recognition is clients. Some of your clients will write to Inc. about their experience with the provider, in this case AWI, and telling their story of how we've been able to help them. So that was fantastic. We tend to be pretty humble, so we don't beat our own drum. But to have
Hmm.
clients of ours be willing and want to share that and have us get that recognition was very gratifying. So continue to do that, right?
For
Continue
sure.
to do the best we can. Now, the other goal for me is to continue to mentor and try to help Tim and Aaron grow into their roles.
That's
They don't need a
awesome.
lot of mentorship, but
Yeah.
now and then I'll say, "Hey, we want to do this or that."
Yeah. That's really cool. Well, congrats on the recognition. That is
Thank you.
amazing. So, what's the most rewarding part of being a business owner? Maybe there's an aspect of the being in it with your family, but just from a personal standpoint, what is the most rewarding part?
Yeah, so you mentioned the family business and seeing. We have three sons. One is
Hmm.
always said, logistics, supply chain. No, no, thank you. I'm going to do some other things, and he's doing great, and that's fine. Um, the But having two of them wasn't even me asking or grooming them. It was, I'd like to do that.
That's cool.
So having that happen obviously is amazing. Um, the other rewarding part is what we've talked about several times already: the relationships. Um, I'm a relationship guy. Um, we have some mutual relationships, so you know how close we are. And
Hmm.
just, I know I could call anybody in the network, any of our partners, and say, "Hey, I need some help." They're right there. When we have our annual meeting, bring people together for about 2.5 days. It literally is like a homecoming or a family reunion.
That's
I
awesome.
just I love it. Yeah.
That's
Hang
awesome.
around with great people.
Yep, makes it really, really fun. My podcast that just went live this week, um, I brought up our mutual connection, Roger, and how he has always harped on me from the time he was my professor to friend and mentor of how important relationships are and that they matter. And they do. They do in everything in life, whether it's business or personal. But in the last year that I've been in business, I like it is 100% relationship driven in everything that I've been able to do in just the last year. And um, I don't think, I don't think there is enough emphasis, at least even early in your college career or when people are navigating what am I going to do in life. Um, I don't. feel like I see it as prominent as it should be in child and just children in general. Um, because gosh, it's so, so important.
Yeah. Um, you're familiar with Jerry Maguire, the movie?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
One of the quotes is "Your net worth is your network,"
Yes. Yeah.
and it's so
Yeah.
true. I mean, I
It is.
feel rich because of the
Mm-hmm.
relationships. And one of the
Yeah.
things that those relationships really came to bear, and you talk about rewarding parts of the journey, was forming Allen, American
Mm-hmm.
Logistics Aid Network, where at the time I was chair of CSCMP,
Mm-hmm.
and I was coming off of that, and this is when Katrina hit, and we were buzzing around the annual meeting, and hear people that were just frustrated with all the stories that they saw about that tragedy and the suboptimal response from a logistics supply chain standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So at one of the general sessions, just said, "Hey, we're hearing this. Anybody that's interested in talking about how we might be able to solve it, let's meet in this room this afternoon." And we had 50 people show up, and
Wow.
that was the beginning. And from the very beginning, it was close friends that I would reach out to and say, "Hey, can you help with this or help with that?" And here we are, 20 years later, celebrating the anniversary this year. Um,
Wow.
that Alan is doing amazing things. So that is certainly very rewarding.
Yeah. Can you
Um,
share with people that might not know what Alan is? Just a quick synopsis of what you do.
sure, sure. Yeah, so Alan is the American Logistics Aid Network, and again formed after Katrina, and recognizing that what we do is supply chain and logistics, and understanding that that is a big part of um, disaster recovery. In fact, since we started, didn't know this when we started it, but since we started, there's some research done that 40% or more of the responses related to logistics, and 80% is wasted. Somebody
Wow.
gets on a TV and says they need diapers in New Orleans. So you have, zillions of diapers go to New Orleans, and then they end up in landfill because
Gosh.
it plugs up the supply chain.
Mm-hmm.
So initially, it was very much of just connecting people, nonprofit organizations that are on the ground doing the relief work, saying, "I need a forklift. I need to move something from point A to point B. I need a warehouse. I need expertise," and connecting them with people that can make that happen. That continues to happen, but it's also evolved into how can we move the needle, and how can we help all of these nonprofits be better at supply
Mm-hmm.
chain logistics. So it's things like we have a simulation that we do where people live what happens when a disaster strikes and learn some of those lessons that about collaboration and relationships and supply chain. Then we also do a lot of work with FEMA, and on a more of advisory role.
Mm-hmm.
Again, so it's transitioned, still very much connecting, but now trying to again, instead of just Alan doing this, helping others help themselves.
Yeah.
Um, so
That's
I have some
incredible.
great friends that are leading it now. I get
Oh,
to watch and
oh,
smile,
awesome.
but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. What a great effort and just something that it's not just business related, right? With these people that you've worked with for years, but now it's for the greater good, which is really, really cool. What a great way to spend your time and create an even, longer lasting legacy. All right. Mark, what's one thing you wish you knew when you started your entrepreneurial journey?
Hmm. Um, that's a difficult question because I mean it's just been amazing from the beginning. So it's not like,
Mm-hmm.
oh man, I wish I knew how to talk to people. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but I'd say if I were to really reflect on that, one of my weaknesses, and still is written communication.
Mm-hmm.
Um, didn't like English when I was in school. Um, I mentioned I started out as a phys ed major. I was
Yeah.
more into sports and that.
Hmm.
Um, did enough to pass, but I didn't develop that skill. Our sons, all three of them, are much, much better at that than I am.
Nice.
And written communications is critical.
Hmm.
I feel like I can talk to anybody, but putting it down in email or blog or whatever is a skill set I wish I knew I was going to need
Hmm.
and developed it before I started on the journey.
Yep. That's great advice. Where can people find you or reach out? So if they're interested in AWI or want to connect with you, how can they do that?
Probably the easiest is email me. I respond to all emails, and that's simply Mark with a K, MARK, at awilogistics.com. You can go to our website, awilogistics.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, um, but or pick up the phone. It's one of the things that I share with younger people is these things that we all carry are great,
But
but texting, even emails, just not the same as doing something like this where we can
mhm.
talk with one another and now see each other. Another
Yep.
amazing thing that's happened over the years. Or go see them.
Yeah.
Let's get together. Let's have lunch, breakfast,
Make the
whatever.
visit. Yep. I love it. Well, thanks so much for joining me today and sharing your story and more about what AWI does and provides for people and businesses. Um, and I continue to just love what you guys do. It's such a needed thing. And I don't know anybody else who does it. And probably if they do, they don't do it nearly as well with your experience and the team that you have and the way that people can trust the legacy that you have built and what you're doing because you've built relationships that I'm sure will last for a lifetime. So thank you for what you do, Mark.
Thank you, Courtney, and thank you for spreading the word. What you're doing and helping others is fantastic, and you're just an amazing person. So it's been an honor to spend some time with you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Entrepreneur's Blueprint. I hope you found inspiration and insights to fuel your entrepreneurial journey. If you're looking for support in building or scaling your business profitably, visit my website or send me an email to learn more about how I help mission-driven businesses become more profitable, proactive, and efficient. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to leave a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It really helps other entrepreneurs discover the show, and it would mean so much to me as well. Until next time, keep building, keep dreaming, and keep going.